Date is January 21st, 2019. I had a out-of-body experience this morning. Unfortunately, I didn't encounter any friends, so it was one of those OBEs that were kind of lonely. Still exhilarating in certain ways. A lot of flying, passing through walls, putting my hand in physical objects and observing my hand as it soaks into the object. And it was one of those that happened, I went to two different places. I started off in the house here, where I usually am. And I ended up at the house on Eckley. And then there was like I almost said a time travel aspect. I don't know if it's so much that, as much as it is. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. It's just the house on Eckley, and I've had this happen before. When I'm in the house, it doesn't look like it does now. It looks like it did when I grew up there. The house here where I am didn't change, though. It's just pretty much stayed the same. But I looked younger, as I tend to in these experiences. In an OBE, sometimes it can be the kind of a thing where I seem to be at least the same age. Sometimes it's hard for me to tell because I don't look in a mirror, and that's what happened with this one. But really, in most of the OBEs I've had, I'm younger. Anyway, it started here in this house, and I was basically floating around the rooms, testing things out. There was really a pretty easy transition with this one. I was like immediately out of my body and floating around very, very well and moving around very well. I didn't really have to get used to the surroundings like I do sometimes. And I remember stopping and looking at one of the doors in the house and putting my hand up to it and watching my fingers go through the door. And then I wound up, I traveled to the house on Eckley. And at that point, that's when the house there changed into what it once was, on the inside especially. There was still the family room, so it wasn't too far back as far as how it looked, old-wise or age-wise. I remember I was going in and out of the house, floating around the yard. There were some other people around that were watching me as I was flying. And I thought that I couldn't verify this, but the way they were looking at me, they appeared to be earthbound. Because they were watching me as I was flying, and they were looking at me like, what in the world are we actually seeing? Obviously a ghost of some sort. And there's a lot more to this. It's kind of coming to me, but I'm trying to remember more of what happened, but I can't. Anyway, I remember when I was out in the backyard, I was floating and walking both, and thinking about the first out-of-body experience I had when I saw that girl. And I actually called out to her, asked if she was there, and I called out to anybody basically. I said, is anybody around? Anybody want to hang out? But Unfortunately, I couldn't find anybody. Nobody answered. But I do remember when I went back in the house, this was a really sweet part of it. I had one encounter. I saw my precious little puppy, Maggie, who's still earthbound. She's still here in this plane of existence, but I saw her as a puppy, which is really strange. This doesn't happen a lot. So that's why I mentioned the going back in time aspect, because she was down in the kitchen, and she was so precious. She was looking at me like, what's happening? And I explained to her, I said, it's okay, honey, we're just out of our bodies right now. And we played, and she started like jumping and running around once I assured her that everything was fine. It was so cute, so precious. And at some point, this is where I realized how young I looked. And again, this is not the first time this has happened. There's a mirror in the family room, a rather large one, and I remember I floated in there. I thought I'd look in, and sometimes mirrors, this hasn't happened in a while, but one time I had repeated OBEs where mirrors served as like portals into different dimensions. And I thought I would see if that mirror was like that, but I didn't. I just ended up kind of getting in front of it and looking at my reflection and really just intrigued by the way I looked. It's like I had a glow. And like I said, I looked younger. And it's really hard to describe. It's not, I mean, I look similar to the way I do now, except that I was younger and had more, it's like I had light all around me. That was like not just on me, but like emanating, like pulsating around me, around my quote-unquote body, whatever you want to call it. And that's really all I remember. It ended with me actually being with Maggie and us playing. And then we both ended up back in our bodies, and there was my puppy right there with me on the bed, as usual. So, even though I didn't encounter any spirits as I usually do, I did encounter my little Maggie, so that was very sweet, to say the least. That's all I remember.